Andy Timmons is a legendary guitarist. From his days with Danger Danger to his solo work, Andy's playing has inspired countless guitarists around the world, myself included. Andy brought his guitar along. We talked about his journey in music, his approach to playing, and the story behind some of his own music. People know you from the rock world, but from what I read, your background is also in jazz.
As I was going through the journey, I just knew that I loved doing these things. I loved the practice. I loved the effort of trying to be a better musician, better guitar player.
And of course, we played a lot of guitar. This one is a real treat.
If there's a lesson to give to anybody being a guitar player, if you love it, keep doing it.
This is Andy Timmons. The guest today, he has his guitar. For those of you watching this on YouTube, he has his guitar with him. Maybe, please, could you introduce yourself with a guitar?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my. Ladies and gentlemen.
It sounds okay.
Yeah, it does. Mr. Andy Timmons. Wow. What an honor.
Hello, everybody. Well, honored to be here, Asa. Thanks for having me, man.
It's great. It's great to have you on. There's like, you used to be kind of a guitar hero of mine. When I was younger,
oh man,
I wanted to be a guitar hero like yourself. Obviously, I didn't like that. Didn't come to fruition, but I it's an honor to finally be able to talk to you and meet you. And
thank you, man.
I like to start these asking people what's like your first memory of music.
Oh, it's easy because I've talked about it a lot. I remember. Well, my mother told me, you know, I don't remember, but she always told me, even to Mary Poppins, I'd be bouncing up and down in my crib, just a nursery rhyme music, you know. Yeah. But my first musical memory is the instrumental part of "I Saw Her Standing There" by the Beatles, because I had three older brothers that were, you know, I was born in 1963, so I had three older brothers that were, you know, buying records in real time throughout that period. So every Beatles record came into the household. And that song was the flip side in America. It was the flip side to "I Want to Hold Your Hand." But it was my favorite part of the song because they weren't singing, but there was this sound. I didn't know what a guitar solo was, but I was already like being drawn by that sound. It's a very reverberant sound. Is, you know, when they needed reverb on their vocals or instruments, they had what were called chamber reverbs, and it literally was taking the signal that they wanted to add reverb to, and there was a concrete room with various baffles that they could dampen the sound in various ways. So there's a speaker on one end piping George Harrison's guitar sound, and there's a microphone at the other, and that's the actual reverb.
That's the same.
And that's, so when you hear "She Loves You" and that wonderful reverb at the end, or the guitar solo that I'm talking about, I Saw Her Standing There, there's reverb on the guitar throughout the track, but then when the guitar solo is on it, it was an edit piece. They did several edit pieces of the whole band playing so George could get the solo right. Yeah. You hear the reverb quite a bit louder. So to this day, as you can tell when I played, I love an ambient sound. And so my reverb is actually being generated by, that's just delay. Sounds very much like a reverb. Here's some actual reverb. This is a plate reverb on the Keeley Zoma. Yeah, that sounds nice, but I've got it's an echo that I helped design called the Halo. Okay, and so it's a dual echo. You know?
Yeah.
But the way you know, it's the way the echoes fold into each other. It creates a reverb. Yeah. And so it's kind of a secret sauce that's always on for me. I've got an expression pedal that I can raise and lower.
Oh yeah.
The effect level. But once I play a piece of music and you hear that sound, it's like my sustain pedal on a piano. Yeah. Now if I take that away,
exactly.
It's still nice.
Yeah, but it's not Andy Timmons.
That's very true. Somebody once said to me, Andy, you don't use delay as an effect. It's part of your sound, and that's right. It's how I come up with my sounds. It's just kind of an always on kind of part of my. That's why I call it the halo. I imagine this halo around every note. It's just got this ambience and this angelic thing. If I want that kind of delivery, Do
you change the tempo for the delay, or do you use it like? Do you have a standard tempo that is like yours?
It's kind of this is. So, when people buy this pedal, there's no programming, there's no searching forums for what to do. It's this exact sound. This is patch 1A. There's 4 banks of 2 presets. So there's eight different presets you can set, and there's 5 different types of delay. But this is, so it's a modulated. So if you can hear just at the end, I don't think you guys are hearing this in stereo, unfortunately. In my headphones, it's stereo, so there's quite an even larger spread. But just as the echoes are kind of fading away and dissipating, it gets a little more out of tune. So there's the halo. It's like kind of the pebble in the lake, and you see the ripples. So if you listen to my initial, so that note will stay in tune. So so just gradually.
Slight.
Levels might be a little bit loud. Hope that's not peaking your meters.
I think it works. It sounds good to me. I love how we went there immediately. Like this is probably going to be a bit guitar nerdy and
sorry.
Yeah, but we want that. Like that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And going to the sound straight away. Let's just go there because you have a very specific sound. I remember that was also what caught my attention with you was the first song I heard from you was. You do this beautiful little song called Electric Gypsy, which is like such a okay. I have like as I told you, I have my guitar here as well.
Do you know it? Okay, join in.
So this is like I haven't played guitar for unfortunately. We're going to talk about that as well, like how and why I stopped playing my guitar and how I feel like society has maybe the guitar has lost its position a bit, and I think maybe it's on the rise again. We'll get to
maybe.
It. But let's talk about Electric Gypsy. That was the first song.
Sure.
Can you hear me though? I don't have the beautiful reverb and the delays. Like my pedal board is 2 pedals right now. And no amp, straight into the computer. So people, I'm much worse than Andy, of course, but I'm not this bad. So please.
Okay. But no, but it's in the fingers, man. Let's hear you. Yeah. Let's hear you.
Okay, so
please.
And then I don't remember the. I don't remember the details.
Well, I'm just honored that you know the song. That's cool.
Something like that.
You can jam on that. You can jam on that forever.
Such a beautiful song.
It's funny, and I appreciate it's that you were drawn to that tune and that you learned it. And it was as YouTube took off and started growing, and people started posting cover versions. Of some of my songs, that was always the one that people went to. Yeah. But I started recognizing that what seemed like a very simple piece of music to me, nobody was getting it right. Like I realized then that there's so much detail in how my playing has evolved over my lifetime that sometimes I really wasn't aware of that detail until I started hearing people that I could help them. Yeah. And that's why I eventually developed a subscription instructional site that I take all my songs and I explain them. But let me get my sound.
Yes.
There's a lot of dynamic and there's a funky thing. It's very Hendrixy.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was going to say because very Hendrixy. Yeah. It's like you take Hendrix and you add some like it's Hendrix, the next level of Hendrix. Kind of,
Yeah,
if
well,
you get me.
I don't know, but I was reading when that riff came to me. I was reading it, but this was 1993, by the way. And this guitar, I recorded that song in 1994, and this is the exact guitar I played it on. So this guitar has been with me half of my life, 30 years old now. Wow. But I was reading a really wonderful biography on Jimi Hendrix. I'm not sure if it's still in print, but it's called Electric Gypsy.
Yeah.
So I just said, I've got a riff, I'll take that, you know. So I stole the title because it was the first biography I read where I really felt like I got to know him and his history. It was really, really a great book. So. But it's meant to be very Jimmy, yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and of course you have so many other great songs as well. But I remember that was the first one I heard where I was like, "This guy is different," because your era of I call you guys guitar heroes, because to me that was kind of an era of artists that kind of came out of the '80s rock and roll boom. And you guys were you didn't care about verses and choruses, and you just gave us what the guitar heads wanted. Like, we just want guitar solos from the start to the finish. Just give it to us. That was what
that's where I didn't want to be that, because I come from pop, I come from Beatles, I come from, you know, I come from very well structured songs, and that to me is why I think that Joe Satriani stood above a bit, because he was writing really good melodies. You know, he played his ass off, and his shred is incredible. But and he was a big influence at that time in my life in the late '80s. And I joined Danger Danger, but I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be Vi and Eric Johnson, and those kind of guys. So that's, you know, I was aspiring to that. I already had my trio, the Andy Timmons band, before I joined Danger Danger, and then I took that detour, and that was a great detour, and I learned a lot about the music business. And it helped me further define me as a person, but also very much so as an artist, and what I really wanted out of music, and why I love to play guitar.
Yeah, and people know you from the rock world, but from what I read, your background is also in jazz, right?
Very much so. Yeah, my first teacher, I was self-taught from the age of 5 till the age of 16, and by that age, I was recognizing that, you know, I really better learn how to read music. I should learn about different styles. And there was a local teacher, you know, even though I was already playing professionally, I was a really solid rock player at 16, but he gave me very simple reading lessons, but then he would start showing me the changes to jazz standards. You know, he would write out the chords, and he gave me a chord book that he had written. But the next week I'd have to do my reading lesson, and then I'd have to comp for him. You know, it could be Misty or All the Things You Are, Satin Doll, all the jazz standards. I learned a new one every week, and he would play the melodies and solo, and I'd comp with him. But he was loaning me records. That was the most important moment. He was loaning me records of Joe Pass and Barney Kessel, Oscar Peterson on the piano. Yeah. So my ears were growing, and it was truly a beautiful thing for me, with that I just loved anything with guitar in it. It didn't matter if it was Kiss, or, you know, Lukather with Toto eventually, when I got into Steve, or Larry Carlton eventually, or country. My first 2 years of college, I was a classical guitar major. Oh, I knew nothing about classical music, but I thought, I love the sound. Let me learn about this, you know. And then my third and fourth years of college, I was a jazz guitar major at the University of Miami, and a pretty well known, you know, jazz school. I wanted to go there because Jocko and Pat Metheny had been there, and Steve Morse and the Dregs formed there. So the other jazz schools seemed to be a bit more, you know, stuck in the 50s, but this seemed like a modern, forward thinking, but taught all the jazz theory as well. And so I went from a small town in Indiana, where I was kind of a big fish in a small pond, to being amongst some of the greatest players in the world. And it was magic, because, you know, that can be discouraging for some people, or it could be very encouraging and inspiring. And luckily it only inspired me. And I had a lot to offer as a rock player, where all the other guys come from either fusion or jazz. So they wanted what I had to offer, and I very much wanted to, you know, get to what they were doing. And we all learned from each other. The faculty and the curriculum was great, but it was very much as important, or more important, the people that I got to hang out with. Yeah. And that's still the education to this day. You know, it's who you hang with, who you can spend time with, and play and learn from, you know. And
especially when it comes to art, I think that it's, I'm always like, not skeptical necessarily, but I'm like, I think that when creating art, it's about finding yourself and finding your, I don't know, finding your path in music. Sure. And it's very hard for someone to learn, but of course, it's hard to find yourself if you don't, like, you need to know all the colors to be able to create great paintings.
Exactly, and I see that now as I was going through the journey. I guess I really didn't have a specific vision of who I thought I was. I just knew that I loved doing these things. I loved the practice. I love the effort of trying to be a better musician, a better guitar player. So I said yes to every country gig. All right, let me learn some of these things. And just through the process and through the years, by the time I went through, Miami, I moved to Texas. I met some musicians. We formed a rock band, and then I did all these things, and I formed my band, and that our first tape got the attention of this band on Epic Records called Danger Danger, and they hired me. But at the very same time, I got offered a gig with Tower of Power, which you couldn't find two more
funk
diverse
heroes.
bands. The funky fusiony kind of horn band from Oakland. That's incredibly cool. But I chose, and I would have loved to have gotten the call from Miles Davis, because Mike Stern was my hero, at that point, and I just loved him, and so. But here I had this opportunity, but it just kind of felt like MTV and major label. There was an allure to that because I, grew up listening to Kiss, and I went to those. Kiss was my first concert I went to when I was 13. Yeah. Joined Danger Danger. We ended up opening for Kiss and Alice Cooper and all these amazing bands that were heroes of ours. But as I went through the process, and I was very much a side guy. I wasn't the the writer in the band. It was a great singer, and the songwriting team was the bass player and the drummer, Bruno Ravel and Steve West. And so, but through that time, I started realizing, okay, this is cool. But I saw at the time, as the label industry existed in the early '90s, it's changed a bit now. But it's even then and now, it's like the actual art and the musician can be on the low end of the totem pole. It was just a big corporate business.
Yeah, it
still is. It wasn't my music. It wasn't my heart. And so, but I had to learn this, because when you're growing up, you kind of think, major label, that's the holy grail. And it really in some ways was, but it wasn't my music. But I also realized at that point, this has nothing to do with what I really want in my life and what I really love, which is just getting better on the guitar, writing my own music. And so when that kind of fell apart, I went back to Texas and just started recording more music with my band, and didn't even send it to labels. That was my first record that had Electric Gypsy. It was called Ear Ecstasy. And I just put it out on my own. I put an ad in Guitar Player magazine. I had an ad for Hughes and Kettner. They put the little thumbnail on my record cover. You can order from Andy here at P.O. Box, whatever, Dallas, Texas. Yeah. And the label that Danger Danger had been on saw this and contacted me. Why didn't you send us your record? I'm like, well, I really don't care to work with a label. You know what I mean? Why? Because the third record, Danger Danger, made for Epic. Yeah. By the time the record was going to come out, rap in Seattle had kind of taken over. MTV said, "Don't even bother making a video. We're not going to play it." And so then the band got dropped, but then made it impossible for us to get the record back. Like, why would you work so hard for something that doesn't belong to you?
Oh yeah, the actual recording, because of of course the label had invested in. They owned the recording, of course. Back then it was expensive to put you guys in the studio, and
they wanted $250,000 to get the record back. Yeah. So I don't have that on me, but that was a huge education, Asa. In that, okay, never again will somebody own my art or my work. I'm just going to do what I love to do, and if somebody hears it, great. If not, I'm happy. And so that's been my solo career since then. Yeah. And all my records, I've, somehow through the grace of friends or afforded studio time by what they would call a spec deal or whatever. You pay the studio back once you sell some records. Oh yeah. So it might have happened on a lower scale and under the radar a bit, but at the same time, it felt good to do it. And then I played in other bands, notably Simon Phillips's Fusion Group, and Olivia Newton-John for 15 years. I was her music director. Yeah. So I was able to say yes to something so diverse.
It's kind of all over the place, yeah. It sounds like it is. Yeah.
But while maintaining and through all that is discovering more and more about, people would tell me, "Oh, I recognize your playing." I'm like, I don't get it. I don't hear it yet. I was too close to it. But it was just, if there's a lesson to give to anybody being a guitar player or not, it's just if you love it, keep doing it. And through that period, through that application of effort, and just regular attempts at improving and honoring whatever gift you have to try to get better at it, then it does get better, and somehow you get rewarded by still doing it. It seems like my career, again, without any major label ever. I will say Steve Vai did get involved, and he signed me to his label when he had a label in the early 2000s called Favored Nation. So Steve getting behind me and releasing some of my records, that definitely helped. But he was the first guy to come along and say, you know, hey, 50-50 split with the artist.
Yeah.
That had never been offered before.
No.
That made sense because he'd been on that other side for so long. Say, hey, after our whatever small expenses, a promotion, whatever. But he wanted me to retain the ownership and the rights, and he was just going to put it out.
Yeah.
And that was a lovely thing for him to do.
Good guy.
For me. For me, a very good guy and very smart guy. I mean, obviously he's a brilliant genius, a musician, and he was the first guy I met. I met him in 1988 when I was doing my very first instrumental recording. That ended up on Ear Ecstasy 5 years later. But he was in a Dallas recording studio, and the studio said, "Hey, Steve Vai's going to be here. You should come meet him." Oh, great! I was like the only other guy there, and we met. He was the first guy I met that he literally had an aura around him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Of course, I was very aware of his abilities as a guitarist, and we all admired him. And even my first band, you know, when we formed the Andy Timmons band, we were playing the Attitude song, you know.
Yeah.
So some of his earliest stuff, but he just has a really special thing about him, and of course we've become very good friends, and he's been nothing but kind and supportive to me and very encouraging. Yeah. So I really treasure that relationship.
He also has like a very particular style. His legato playing is
yeah. You know, it's that guy, you know him in a few notes, and his sense of harmony is very Zappa-esque, what he got from his time studying his thing. But of course, it's his very own thing now. You hear his music. I think I would recognize him if he wasn't even playing guitar.
Yeah.
You know, I think I would recognize the composition. Steve Morse is the same way, where, you know, he's an incredible virtuoso, but it's really his writing style that's even more outstanding. There's nobody thinks like that because it's country, it's rock, it's Baroque. You know, it's got all these elements that he blends together like nobody else. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear you say that. But when was it, like, when on this journey did you decide that becoming like, I'm all in, I want to become a guitarist and I want to be among the best?
Yeah.
Like when is it a moment where you went like, okay, this is what I want to do?
I think it was when I talked about being 16 and finding that teacher, because, you know, again, I'd already been playing professionally since I was 13. So for 3 years, playing clubs regularly with some older musicians. I was the kid, you know. And so I just knew I had no interest in anything else. It was kind of clear. I think it was clear from a very younger age. I just didn't recognize it as this is what I'm going to do yet. But also when I saw Kiss when I was 13, it was the Destroyer tour, 1976. And my mom drops me off. I'm by myself at this rock concert. I'm smelling pot for the first time. I had no exposure to that. I'm 13. And my seat is in the top of the back of the rafters of the Robert Stadium, Evansville, Indiana. You know, held maybe 13,000 people. It's sold out. And I remember feeling that this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I'm a kid in a small town that it just seemed like I didn't even think it was possible.
Yeah.
But then, you know, if you think that's 1976, 1990, what is that, 14 years later, there I am opening for that same band, you know, doing these arena tours. And it was just absolutely unthinkable. It was like, you know, but I had a band for about 7 years in Indiana. It was called Taylor Bay. And we eventually, you know, really made a sound that was very unique to us. We, you know, had a great keyboard player that wrote very Steely Dan-esque chords. And I brought the rock and roll thing. We had two girls singing that, you know, really, really great vocals. And, you know, I was the motivated kid. Everybody was kind of, you know, starting to get into their home life. But I'm sending out tapes to all the A&R guys for record labels. Yeah. I'm just a kid in his bedroom. At that point, I'm 17. But I'm like, from the local radio station, KC 103, Dave Lyons gives me this sheet of all the promotion guys, all the A&R guys. Like, I'm personally sending them tapes. And usually, you know, you're supposed to get a lawyer and have them submit it properly. But I was getting responses. They're like, man, you guys sound great. Keep us posted, you know. Yeah. But again, it was starting to get to the point where I heard about Miami, and I had a fork in the road. Do I stay with the hometown thing where, again, people are not as motivated as I? They loved it, but, you know, people getting married and settling down a little bit, or this opportunity to go to Miami. And I went to my local music store. It was called, strangely enough, in Evansville, Indiana, it was called Dallas Pro Shop. Mm-hmm. And I'm in there talking to the guy. He's passed on now, Bruce Jeffries, sound man extraordinaire. He says, man, if you don't go, you're going to regret it the rest of your life. Yeah, and it was the moment where life changed for me, because I went from maybe kind of getting stuck in this small town thing, Not that it wouldn't have been a nice life, but going to Miami it opened the world up to me because I really hadn't been anywhere outside of my bubble, and I go down there and then here are these, there's Teddy Castellucci, Teddy Kumpel, Mike Abbott, Brian Monroney, Tim Gadamer was a rock player. There was all these guys that were just on such a higher level in some ways than me, but I was on a higher level in the rock thing. But it changed everything, and the faculty, like I say, was great. And then from there, it was just this never-ending, winding road of wherever it led me. And that's how I ended up in Texas, and that's how I ended up in New York, and that's how I met in a bag in Texas. And now I've been in this house now for 28 years, married, and very, very happy, and just kind of doing things on my own terms. Yeah. But that's what got me out into the world. And I couldn't have done all the things I've done had I not gone to Miami when I did.
Yeah, I think
it might have happened another way. I don't know.
Such a powerful lesson there. No, it's such a powerful lesson. I think that I can relate, and I think most people can. That even if it's not in music necessarily, but that sometimes in life you get handed like this. You have to take a leap of faith that you could either. And you never the problem is that you know what you have, right? You knew your band. You knew they were talented. You knew that you could maybe get something to work with them.
Yeah.
But then it was like, if I leave, then I lose the band. I lose what I have. But maybe it's I can find something better. And I tend to find that when you make that leap, usually what you find is something better. There's a reason why you have this temptation to take that leap. And so very often I tend to tell people, if they ask me for advice, that you do that, because I think they actually have made up their mind. They're asking because they are. They just need someone to just say, yes, this is the way to go. And I think that, and what you learn is, it seems like, of course you've learned this, and also what the other thing you said with sending tapes and sending demos and working hard. I think a lot of people, in seeing someone like you, is like, oh, of course he made it because he's so talented, and you're talented, but you also worked harder than everybody else or most other people.
You.
And I think I don't know you, but I obviously you did, and the way you're talking about it, I think that's a hidden side of things that a lot of people are, and I used to be that way myself. That who am I to send tapes? Like, I'm just this weird kid from Norway. I will never be able to sit digitally from Oslo and talk to one of my guitar heroes from Texas. But then the worst thing that will happen is that someone will tell you no, and if it's when you get comfortable with all the no's, that's when you can get stuff happening. And I guess you've gotten a lot of no's in your life as well, but that's not. We don't see that. The only thing we see is Andy Timmons. He's only getting yeses. He's so talented. No point in me sending a demo to anyone because I don't have that talent.
Well, I'm especially younger. I didn't have really much self-confidence, and like you say, it took that guy Bruce Jeffries to kind of give me permission. I couldn't make the jump on my own, but just a guy that I was an older guy, and I respected, and him saying that kind of gave me. But there is a lot of leap of faith in my whole path. Just saying yes to stuff, but having good antenna to make good decisions. Not always making the great decision, but at least having that faith is hugely important.
You could always course correct, right?
No, it's like, I just did a podcast yesterday called "Follow Your Dream," and we didn't talk about specifically following your dream. It was a great title, but my thought was like, well, yeah, but you might get to where the vicinity of what you think that dream is. But it's like Tony Robbins has a great analogy, the self-help guru, where a jet airplane is off course 95% of the time. Yeah, but it's just course correcting. Your actual phrase just hits it on the nail. You got to kind of figure out along the way, well, is that really what I want? And that's what Danger was for me. I course corrected. I thought that was it. Yeah. Okay, it's cool. If your ego it was really nice to a little bit of fame. You're on TV. You're in all the magazines. I can't deny that wasn't massively fun. And I'd walk down to the newsstand and see yourself in the magazine. But eventually, you can kind of see, well, that's kind of a shallow thing. It can gratify part of the ego, but it wasn't what was important to me. I wanted to be. It wasn't about fame. I just wanted to be respected by the people that I love and respect. For Steve Lukather called me. I gave him that first CD with Electric Gypsy on it. I'd met him several times at that point. Not that he would remember me, but I handed him my CD. I said, Steve, 3/4 of the notes on here come from you, because he really is, one of the biggest influence I've ever had. There was a period in my life where I just absorbed everything he did. It really spoke to me, and a lot of my time feel comes from him. Some of my vibrato, some of my bending, and wrote my phone number on. And about 2-3 weeks later is back when we had answering machines with an actual cassette tape in it. You had to hit play and it would play your messages. And it was Steve, and he was like, "Hey, dude, man, I hate you." He says, "Yeah, I heard you were good, man. I didn't know you were this good." And he left this really long, sweet message, and I was literally in tears. Yeah, because that's it for me. That's kind of like my older brother going, "You're okay, kid," Yeah. And that, so there's been a lot of these relationships that I've now forged with so many of my heroes that I really treasure. And again, it's not that it's all about validation, but it's just nice to know you're doing something that somebody you respect on such a high level also thinks is cool, as well as whatever fans that I may have along the way. It's unbelievably rewarding and flattering. So I just want to keep getting better and keep writing better tunes and keep on doing that thing, whatever it is.
And you're doing it well. But I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about something that I've thought a lot about, and it's you belong to what I'll call the golden generation of guitarists and guitar heroes, and this might be from my perspective. So, let's put that out there. But I think there used to be a time in the late '80s, in the early '90s and '90s where you had you mentioned like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Paul Gilbert, even the Swedish sensation Yngwie Malmsteen.
One of the greatest ever. Oh my God! I finally saw him live about 10 years ago, and it was just one of the best performances I've ever seen.
A character, and an amazing guitarist.
He's a character, exactly.
and Eric Johnson, of course. Like, there's a lot of these guys, and I know I'm probably lumping a few generations together here.
It's okay,
but to me, you guys were one generation.
Sure.
And I, growing up as a kid myself, my dad introduced me to guitar players, and my first influences were Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan was mine. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan was
that's a good dad. Yeah.
Yeah. When I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, it was like, this is what I want to do. Like that thing over there, that's what I want to do.
Well, clearly a lot of people did, because his thing is so visceral. Yeah. He wasn't really playing a different vocabulary. He was just putting it all together in a way and just putting his heart in it like nobody really has.
The sound.
He had Jimmy, he had the tone, he had Hendrix inside of him, he had Albert King inside of him, all the Kings, and just put it together in a way that nobody really had. And it was so special that he spawned several generations of players after him.
Yeah,
you can trace right back.
But my point was that I wanted to be kind of like you guys, and I played in bands because that was what you did when I was in my adolescent years. And I remember this. I remember when I was in high school, playing in bands. Like we were still kind of that was my claim to fame. Like I wanted to learn how to play the guitar to get the girls. Like that's how cheesy it was.
That's what Gene Simmons says. Gene Simmons says anyone that plays music for any other reason than to get laid is full of shit. I called him on. I said, "I'm sorry, Gene. I just wanted to impress my brothers." Eventually, I did meet my wife at a gig, but that was not the reason. But it's a valid reason.
And also, of course, because I love music, and to me, like the only way you can make music was together. So you had to have a band, and I was writing songs, and I also spent so many hours of my life being the motivated guy, wanting to collect people and let's do this thing. Let's go out. We're here in Norway, but we don't have to be stuck here. Being the guy who wanted to take that leap. But unfortunately, when you play in a band, you have to have people with you. Like you're only as good as your, in a sense, weakest link. Not to talk down anyone, the person I play with, but
it's exactly
it's about motivation. And although a lot of those guys were probably more talented than I was, but where I'm going with this is that I remember we used to look down at the people who were making music on the computer, like the DJs were like, you guys. How would you ever amount to anything? Like
that's not music, right?
Yeah, like somebody will ever listen to this, and then of course they won. They won, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to reach the masses. That was the genres that won. So what I want to talk to you about is that
there's a lot to unpack there. I don't agree with all that.
No. Okay, I'll let you. I want to hear your thoughts on this eventually. I'll just get to my point.
Yeah, no,
is that
for sure.
I feel like the guitar heroes and the allure of the guitar and the bands, it kind of lost. Like they kind of lost its allure. Like I feel like the kids, the last 10, 15 years, the high schoolers, they're not necessarily dreaming of becoming. Like creating bands. They're not dreaming of becoming amazing guitarists anymore. They want to be rappers. They want to be DJs. They want to be producers. And have you felt that? And what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts. I mean, there was such an upheaval when Nirvana and Pearl Jam came along. So all these bands that were doing well, Danger being one of them, and all of a sudden, the grunge thing, right? And there was so many musicians that looked down on that. Even before we start talking, you're talking about techno and computer-based music, even though drum machines were happening by then. Sure, if you listen to Def Leppard records, it was all that. But I love Nirvana and Pearl Jam, especially Nirvana. I just loved it because it was guys in a room playing together. But that gets to your point about, okay, now we're far away from that, where then the technology became more affordable with first it was ADAT 8-track tapes, which was like a VHS format, and then of course computer recording became the new thing. So then people could be creative and not need those other people. They can program the drums, they start to play all the instruments, and all that is completely valid. But what I would argue with is that people do still recognize the difference in the feel of real musicians playing together. I'm a huge Tom Petty fan, and I'm always amazed that all these box sets that come out that have alternate takes. Every take, it's the live vocal, it's the live band, and it doesn't sound hardly any different than the record. They're making those records in real time, like the Beatles did largely. A little different towards the end, where it was a little more compartmentalized. All that to say is, I'm glad I didn't worry about that too much as far as the music that I kept creating. I wasn't worried about after Danger, because in that band, it was very much about the charts, and they were kind of chasing Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, or records were becoming a bit too perfect. I called it the Mutt Lange effect, where every syllable was EQ'd a certain way, and it was very much programmed drums. It was just taking the life. They're incredible pieces of art, but man, it doesn't have the feel. He had Mickey Curry play on a Bryan Adams record, but all he uses was his cymbals. It's one of the great rock drummers, So these are things along the way, though, and to the point of young people not wanting to do that in the same way. There's plenty of evidence on the internet, of some incredible virtuosos that are blossoming. Now maybe they're blossoming in a different way, where it's bedroom playing. But I see some of these guys with incredible chops that are getting out and playing live. And Brian, what's his name? I'm going to get it wrong. His last name is Meter, Josh Meter. One of the greatest virtuosos out there right now.
Oh, great.
Playing incredible. And there's so many I'm going to forget names right now. But yeah, some friends.
Mateus Sasato. You have
Mateus.
Yeah.
We finally met at the last NAMM show, and
and you have this. Now I'm losing names. This Mancuso.
Oh God! And another monster player.
And you have this guy from Indonesia. If you people who have to go check him out. His name is Ahmed Satria. I think he has quite a lot of followers on. I'll link. I'd love
to check him out.
Amazing.
So there's still a passion and love for the virtuoso musician, but I think along the way, though, there was a lot of people that, because it wasn't an immediate gratification, that's why, as the video game generations, and it's all this, I can master Guitar Hero or Minecraft or whatever it is. But hey, man, music is hard. Music and really mastering an instrument, it's work. It's a lot of time, So unless you're that person willing to do that, you'll never get to the place of some people that you might think, that's a great musician. But I just see it as all one linear thing, and I don't think too much about, is it in the culture, is it popular? Because certainly in my algorithm, it is, when I go to YouTube or, but obviously it's a niche thing that's tailored to you. But whether there's guitar solos on a Rihanna song, I don't give a flying, it's okay. Let them do their thing. I'm going to create the music that's in my heart. And Elvis Costello once brilliantly said, just make the music you want to make. And maybe someday at the bottom of the ocean, somebody's going to find that. Yeah. And if it truly has merit, then it'll be appreciated, whether in your lifetime or not, who knows? But, that's, I don't worry about it.
And I think that, but it's fascinating too, because it might be that. So I think that the guitar is on the rise again. I have this hypothesis that because what we see now is that technology made it easier and cheaper for people to make music themselves. Sure. And I think there's something to be said for producing. And I went down this route. I eventually caved and I learned a computer, and that's what I do now. I'm producing music and I'm making more digital music. And I think that is possible to make. And I think that mixing the analog with the digital, I think there's possible to make some magic there.
That's the key. Yeah.
But what I see is that. What I believe will happen when AI is going to take over is that it's easy for AI to create to compete with the producers and to create amazing beats. It's very hard for AI to do what you're doing, to be Andy Timmons. Good luck.
So
good effing luck.
Maybe there'll be a plug-in package one day. Hey, be in. I mean, yeah, it's a thing. It's a concern. I see, of course, like with every bit of this technology, there's. It's always a double-edged sword. Some things are cool about it. Some things are not cool about it. Like when the internet was taking off and Napster was a thing. It might have been before your time, but it was this peer-to-peer file sharing.
I remember Napster.
Instantly, my entire life was available for free. Whereas up until that point, I thought, my recorded legacy, that'll be, when I have a child, that'll be their thing. Yeah. That went away in the moment. I went to my father-in-law's. Oh, he's very technologically. We call him Inspector Gadget. He had an electronics repair shop his whole life. He goes, check out this website. Let's type your name in. Yeah. And I saw stuff that I didn't even have that people had uploaded. and I went white. I went because I just knew immediately. Oh man, this is a thing, and it's not. But as time went on, and as a player, we were mortified of people recording your show because it was going to go on YouTube immediately. Mm-hmm. And it was people, we'd have security guys out there, no video, being like that about it. But after a while, it really became my career, is how people found out about me by people uploading some of my performances that I had no control over. But
I think that was how I found you. I think I saw some type of live show you did for Ibanez or something.
That's the point. Yeah, somebody put that up as a bootleg. Yeah, the night that I played with Steve Vai and Paul Gilbert for the Hoshino 90th anniversary. And, it became apparent that, one guy came to my show and says, well, I've downloaded all your stuff, but I'll buy a t-shirt. So at the end of the day, it became everybody's MTV. It became the radio station. Mm. And that's the Elvis Costello thing I mentioned. If something truly has merit, it's gonna find an audience somehow, because as you found me, it was somebody sharing it, going, "Hey, check this out," and that keeps happening. Then, and again, I know I have the internet to thank for a lot of my fan base, and that's a beautiful thing, whether it's monetizing for me or not. But at this point in my career, it's kind of it's your brand, What do you represent musically? What have you done, and what it is that you're trying to continue to do and to improve upon? And the folks that, there might be some folks that would rather I play Danger style stuff, and that's valid, but I've grown so much since 1990 that I just got to be the best version of me. I don't mind playing that music. It's kind of challenging to play like I did when I was 25, Yeah. Your chops are in a different place and all these things. So I've done what I've during the pandemic, I got prolific doing online live streaming shows on a platform called Stage It.
Okay.
And I've done almost 200 shows now. Ooh. And so I'll pick a theme where I might play an entire record of mine, or I'll pick a variety of things. Sometimes I'll just sit and play Beatles on the acoustic guitar and sing. But people wanted to hear Danger, right? And so, I went back and relearned all the Danger stuff. Some fans were thrilled, and it was fun for me. So, I keep all of it, ready to go whenever I can.
We got to do some more playing before I let you leave.
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
You released in 2011. You released a Beatles. You did Sgt. Pepper's with your band, Andy Timmons band. You released Sgt. Pepper's. What a smart thing to do. Give us some Beatles. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so that whole thing started. It was never my intention to release an album of Beatles stuff, but I was doing. I had this arrangement of Strawberry Fields Forever, and my tour promoter in Italy, Riccardo Capelli, he was recognizing, man, you guys play that song every night, and the place lights up. Like Beatles is kind of this common thing that so many people love. He said, you should do a whole night of Beatles next time you come. I'm like, man, there's no way I could pull that off. I was very self-deprecating, very, but it got the wheels turning. So it just kind of became a hobby after a while. I started, I started doing versions of Beatles songs, but I had done the Resolution record where we just used one guitar, bass, and drums. There were no overdubs. So I was coming up with arrangements that represented each song, even without the bass and drums. Like, what if I could? The next song I found was. And I thought, what if I could do the whole Sgt. Pepper record? Yeah. And actually, so the little trivia, so Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane were meant to go on the Sgt. Pepper record. They were the first two things they recorded after they stopped touring in '66, famously Candlestick Park in August of '66. Yeah. They went their separate ways. John went and made a movie. They all went on vacation. They came back to the studio. They recorded Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, and When I'm 64, all meant for the new record. But the record label wanted a single, so they took Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. Yeah. Rest is history. But then, so I just started working literally as a hobby over the course of about 2 years. I could finally play start to finish Sgt. Pepper in my studio, just for my own edification. I wasn't planning on recording it with the band, but we were in the studio not long after that, recording a batch of new original material. And the studio that was supposedly booked, and we only had 2.5 days, became open. Somebody canceled. Hey, we got 2 extra days. Yeah. Andy, what do you got? I'm out of songs right now. We recorded what I wanted to do. And Mitch, my drummer, he said, "What about those Beatle arrangements you keep talking about?" And so he was the guy. And with Ricardo, my promoter over here, and Mitch was like, "Let's do it. Let's record it right now." And we did it. In 2.5 days, we recorded that whole record. Well, at least the drums and half of the guitars. Yeah. Mitch and I knew the material very well. Mike, had to learn some of the stuff. And learning Paul McCartney stuff is not easy if you don't have it in your back pocket already. Yeah. So we played them all live. Mike did what he could. And then over the course of the next year, I finished, whatever half of the songs I didn't get live. Some I got very lucky and did. Mitch's parts were so great. I knew he'd be the perfect drummer because he loves and knows Ringo very well. Mm-hmm. His playing style. Not many people can really do that. And so, but I struggled with it during the course of working on that record. I really, my confidence ebbed and flowed in that. If you're gonna do it, boy, it better be really, really strong, because it's kind of hollowed ground. That's one of the greatest records of all time. And I'm a huge Beatles fan, but I'm not always a fan of Beatle covers. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, well, why are you messing with that? Yeah. But anyway, but I was so gratified that the first people I send it to is Steve Lukather and some of these friends and heroes of mine, and they all got what I was intending to do, which is to replicate this the best way I could in one linear fashion, no overdubs. Just try to see if I could, I did it from memory. So it's as the record plays in my head. What's to the fore? Is it the guitar riff? Is it the vocal? Is it the sound effect, the strings? Yeah. And so that's how I came up with the arrangement.
You also done, I think I saw this, you've done this live. You've done Bohemian Rhapsody.
Queen. Yeah. I laugh because it's the exact same scenario where you married the right girl when it's your wedding anniversary. So it's November 2nd, whatever year Bohemian Rhapsody came out. Yeah. I know it was November 2nd because November 3rd I was leaving for Europe on a Ibanez clinic tour. So November 2nd, my wife and I are at the very first showing at 11 o'clock in the morning at the movie theater watching Bohemian Rhapsody on our wedding anniversary, the day before I leave the country. And we see the movie, and I didn't expect it to hit me as emotionally as it did, because it's about the band, but it's a lot about Freddie Mercury and his dad, you know, and that relationship. And so after the movie, we're just really, really blown away. And I go home and I start just playing some Queen. Just what if I did? You know, my best friend, or what if I did? You know, I'm in love with my car. But I went like, I thought, no, there's no. And I said, there's no way. So I leave and just mess with it. And my wife, she never, ever, ever comments on music I'm working on. She kind of lets me do my thing. She doesn't want to interfere. She doesn't interject any opinion. But on this clinic tour, I'm playing with coins, and I'm like talking about Brian May and why we love him so much. Yeah. And and I talk to my family every day on the phone when I'm away. And so she goes, "Oh, I can't wait to hear what you do with the Bohemian Rhapsody arrangement." She called me on. I'm like, "Oh shit, now I got to do it." And so that one's not done by memory. That I had to spend a lot of time with her and try to get that right. You know,
one of the craziest arrangements. Yeah.
And to replicate that, you know. So I did it first, just live in my studio as a solo arrangement. But the band has done it a couple times now too. So that's a lot of fun to play with the power trio. You know,
yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Pretty.
What was the first song that you learned on guitar? Like, what was, if you go back again? Like,
oh, I know exactly.
You know exactly.
Well, I mean, the first song. I mean, by ear, it's a very specific memory. The first song I learned on guitar, I was about 4 years old. 5 years old. I had a toy plastic guitar. Now, mind you, this is 1967, 68. There was no Smoke on the Water yet, because everybody... That was a song. But now it was... Before that... I'm not your stepping stone. The Monkees. But look out.
Yeah.
So I could play on one string. I could play that melody on one string. You know, that still is a big thing.
And you learned it by ear.
That,
you just sat down. You had the guitar.
No, not that. Oh, not that one. At that age, my brothers would have showed me, because I had each of my 3 older brothers played a little bit of guitar. There was a Silvertone acoustic guitar in the house, and they could play basic cowboy chords and single note thing. But it was I was later on. We moved to Indiana, and I was in my bedroom. It hadn't dawned on me that you could learn from your record. I hadn't dawned on me yet. So I'm not sure what age, but one of my favorite records of all time, Every Picture Tells a Story by Rod Stewart. Yeah. Has Maggie May on it. That's the big hit. But there was the first song is called Every Picture Tells a Story. And it starts out with this wonderful acoustic 12-string played by Ron Wood. And it's in D. And so I think that the record was on, and I played a D chord, and the record was a D. And I went, wait a minute, that's the same chord. Again, the epiphany. It sounds so silly, but it had 3 chords in the whole song, so wasn't that difficult. But there it was. And then a friend of my oldest brother showed me a bar chord. Showed me it's the power chord. Yeah. And I had Kiss Alive, and once I figured out they were tuned down to have stuff, I don't know how I figured it out eventually, but I learned that entire record, because once or one of my favorites to play. I mean, that was the perfect record for a young player, because pretty straight ahead, and Ace Frehley's soloing was fantastic. He had a great wide vibrato. So that was, and it wasn't Yngwie, so I could actually, I didn't have to slow anything down. It was had I heard Yngwie when I was 13, I probably would have given up. But no, it was just a wonderful, wonderful time.
But how are you to this day? Like, are you still being like amazed when you hear other players? Like, are there some players where you're going like, I can't do this? Like, what's going on over here?
Every day and on multiple levels, and I have to be careful not to overexpose myself to things that just blow me away so much that I get down on my playing, and that's easy to do.
Do you have some examples?
Oh God! Well, Josh Meader, who I spoke of, or Joe Bonamassa, who has such facility on the guitar and the blues rock. I mean, but what I have, the healthiest thing that I ever did was realize, and this wasn't until I was probably in my 50s, to tell you that sometimes it takes people a while to get to this place. I'm still not, completely, I'm not immune from this feeling, but it was easier early on in my life to hear somebody and just be so down on myself because, oh man, I'll never be able to do that. Well, why did I think that I had to be able to do that in the first place? I mean, how big is your ego that thinks that you have to be as great as everyone else? It's not realistic. Nobody's ever going to be Ellen Holdsworth, or any or Yngwie. There's great imitators, but they're never that person. And Stevie Ray's the same way. There's a huge amount of imitators, but they didn't live his life. All you have to be, and this goes for me, and it goes for you, Asa, it goes for everybody. Just be the best version of yourself that you can be. Yeah. I humbly say, I know I have a lot to offer. I know there's things that are beautiful in my playing. I don't always love it. But I can recognize when I'm saying, okay, man, that was cool. But there's a lot of things where I just cringe and go, oh my God, I do feel like I'm still a beginner. I feel
insane to hear, but I think it's interesting.
No, but this is why, and I like to say it because it usually elicits that response, but I do truly mean it in that, when I hear, these guys are my friends in my hero, but Eric Johnson or Satriani or Vi or God, Mike Stern, who I've played with, these are jaw-dropping musicians, but I don't have to be them. All I can do is be the best me, Let me take that inspiration. And it's wonderful to hear these virtuosos because you go, oh, that's possible. And then, if there's something in there that you can possibly aspire to, that you go for it. And Mike Stern once said to me, he says, man, sometimes it's our shortcomings, or it is our shortcomings that make us, because I can't do that a certain way, I'll find my own way to do something like it. And then it kind of becomes you. Yeah. And then, as David Bowie, I know I'm referencing so many quotes here, but this is my thought process. David Bowie once said the greatest thing where somebody was complimenting him. You're such an innovator. You do all these things. Oh, no. I'm a collector. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm a collector. Mm-hmm. I don't know why he's Australian all of a sudden, but I'm a collector. He just, because the thing about Ziggy Stardust and what he created with that persona, there was already Mark Bolan, and there's probably the sweet was bubbling under. So he was kind of reacting and taking from other things that he loved. It came out very much him, because one of his big inspirations was Anthony Newley. It was just this kind of loungy pop singer. I once had a gal, or should I say? Yeah. Well, there's this vibrato, and you hear it as soon as you hear Anthony Newley. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So he called himself and said, So, but there's debate there. But I think each of us, like we mentioned, Stevie Ray, he was a collector. Yeah. He took Albert and he took, Hendrix, but it came out so him, in his tone and his heart, that's the undeniable individuality that we all have the potential to put forth.
100%.
But don't get discouraged. Don't do what I did many times in my life and get so bummed,
and don't get obsessed. Don't get cynical. Like that's also something I feel like is a red thread here. Is that, and I think that you're right in that we're all collectors and we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And so, like when I listened to you, to me you were an innovator and you had your unique sound. Thank you. But I can always, when I get older and I my references get wider, I can also hear that, oh yeah, I know where he took that one. I know where he's like inspired, like took that inspiration from. And I think that goes for everyone.
I sometimes get surprised if I hear a recording that I did that I haven't heard, and I hear it back and went, oh my God, I know exactly what I'm thinking there. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's part of something that I talk about called the Auralect. And it's this collection of melodies and music and players and ideas that you've taken in, that you've loved. And sometimes you may not be conscious of where you got it from in the moment, but it's what drives us to play and go melodically where we go. That's why I talk about this particular idea with Lennon and McCartney and why were they so great at writing songs? Well, they learned a crap ton of songs. They just learned so many tunes, not just Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly 3-chord. They learned show tunes. Yeah. And there's the proof, they just had this huge palette to draw from. So they were collectors, big time.
100%. And today, in today's age, it's so much easier to collect. I've heard this interview with Paul McCartney where he says that they had to go to a different town to learn a chord. He learned F.
That's his B, his B7.
Yeah,
oh, he knows
B7,
the B,
maybe. Yeah,
he knows the B7 chord.
Yeah,
they would take buses.
Yeah, exactly. You had to learn a
Learn the
chord. Today you can just go on YouTube, or you can go to your site and get lessons from the best. So Paul McCartney didn't have that. So thank you so much for your time, Andy.
Asa, no problem.
I want to end this with a quote. You've had a lot of quotes. I found this quote online from a random person, but I feel like to me it summarizes your playing. And he said this: Andy Timmons is the tastiest guitar player alive. He brings so much emotion to the table. The only guitar player that can make grown men cry. To me, that was beautiful.
That's because I'm just out of tune. See, that's my secret. If you just get just out of tune, it's like what it makes me. It gets him right here. No, what a beautiful thing to say. And that's to be honest, it's nice for me to hear you say that and verbalize it like that. Because again, sometimes I think, oh man, I don't have the chops of this guy. Or I wish I could do. But at the end of the day, that's me being me. I think any artist, the best they can aspire to do is that their art really does reflect who they are as a human being, and that's what we've always gotten from art, be it a painting or be it from our favorite music. It kind of teaches us about ourselves through somebody really being authentic. There's plenty of inauthentic art. There's plenty of people that can just create and create for the sake of creation, and that's not wrong. But boy, you start to recognize when you do hear something that's coming from a deeper place. That's why Chopin is so influential to me. I don't know how he created the moments that he created, but it was clear that he felt things on a very deep level. And so he's just one guy I've resonated with. And Pat Metheny, his compositions is another thing where, man, he just gets to such a deep emotional thing. And so there I am collecting from two radically different people and eras. But it influences and informs what I do with a rock guitar in my hands, all these different styles of music.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Where can people find you? If people are listening and seeing this, they want to see more of you. Where can people find you?
Sure. Well, AndyTimmons.com is the first place to go. There's my guitar experience, no E before the X. Guitarexperience.net is my instructional site where you can check out just almost every one of my tunes I've gone through to teach. I play it on screen, and then I have a guy transcribe it for all the tabs and notations, and then I sit for an hour and play you every note and nuance, show you how to do it. But I always encourage people, listen first and try to figure out what you can on your own, because your ear is your most important tool. And then, of course, type my name into Google or YouTube, and all kinds of embarrassing things come up.
It's great.
My life is back there. So
I hope to talk to you again, Andy. This was an honor.
Thanks, Asa. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Anytime.
See ya.
Thanks, man. Cheers, Asa.